Jai Hind, everyone. Just a week back, Elon Musk became the world's first trillionaire. But his most promising venture, Starlink, is now facing an existential crisis. Starlink has now been effectively shunted out of the two world's most populous markets. It should not be referred to as just the populous countries, but the potential markets for Starlink, the potential place wherein the Starlink would have minted the greatest amount of money. The two countries, India and China, that have the largest amount of internet users have disallowed Starlink from performing its operations in India. So today, in this session, we will be discussing the most prominent geopolitical tech tussle. Starlink, which is the world's most advanced satellite-based internet network, and India being the most potential market, now sits frozen. Why? Because the answer to everything is that Elon Musk Starlink has promised to connect every corner of India. But India says no, not very fast. Because for India, it is the time to ensure its sovereignty, its technical sovereignty, its national security before allowing a foreign player to play with its digital world inside India without giving full control over the Indians. So, what essentially is Starlink and what all are the issues? We'll be discussing all of these issues in this session. Now, when we talk about what Starlink is, so Starlink is essentially SpaceX, the Elon Musk owned satellite internet constellation, which provides high speed broadband via low Earth orbit satellites. Now, over 7,000 plus satellites are in orbit as of now, and this is the largest constellation that has ever been built. It provides high speed over 200 Mbps with very low latency and global coverage, especially in the remote and the unserved regions. So even though it is highly promising for a country like India, but the operational it is already operational in 100 plus countries but has been facing restrictions in China and now in India. Now, why this becomes an issue in India? Because India has practically allowed them in the first stage to go ahead with it. Now, here in the strategic context says that Starlink is the crown jewel of SpaceX $1.75 trillion valuation, and India's market is critical for its future revenue, especially because of the population. So, Starlink is revolutionizing the internet access worldwide, but India sees both an opportunity and a serious strategic risk in this. Why? Because a company that is based outside, a company that is governed by the laws of a foreign country, how will it ensure that it will not breach into the sovereignty and security of the country? So, this is not just about fast internet, it is about who controls the channel through which the global data flows. And for India, that control is must and that control is non-negotiable. So what essentially is the current status that we'll be discussing? In 2025, Starlink had received the Global Mobile Personal Communication by Satellite license. So this is essentially the first stage that every telecommunication operator has to clear before it is allowed to operate in India. Now, this allowed the preparatory work but was not a final commercial launch approval. As of June 2026, final security clearances are being withheld by the Ministry of Home Affairs, primarily upon the security reasons. Okay. Now the result is that commercial launch is effectively frozen despite years of negotiations. Even though Starlink says, the company states that it remains in active and productive discussions with the government of India. Even though Starlink is not acknowledging this, but essentially the project is somewhere in a stage wherein there are high chances that it will not be allowed to operate in India. So practically, India has not banned Starlink outrightly, but it has effectively frozen its launch over some unresolved security concerns that have not been promised or are not being acknowledged from the side of Starlink. Okay, so now herein we have to note the distinction. This is not a legal ban as it has been put through in China. It is a strategic withhold. The government of India is applying maximum pressure without closing the door entirely, and it is just that government of India requires complete control and a complete promise from Starlink that in the future the country would not support our enemies or would not act otherwise in a situation when India wants them to align with itself. Now, in this situation, how these tensions have arisen, let us have a look over it. In late 2025, India had granted the GMPCS license to Starlink on various conditions. In early 2026, Iran conflict had escalated. Now, this is where the catch comes. Okay. Now, Iran also has not allowed Starlink to operate in its territories. But during the Middle East crisis, okay, during the Iran war, okay, there were various instances wherein Starlink was being used by the adversaries of Iran. Now, it was the situation that Iran had also made a formal complaint in the international telecommunication authorities, okay, but the issue was not resolved at that time. Even though there has been a situation, now India is apprehensive and India thinks that if a situation similar to what Iran had faced comes before India, then how would Starlink operate? Okay. Herein, despite having no official license, okay, its terminals, Starlink terminals, were widely used by the protesters and the foreign actors, and it was essentially a situation wherein even after the complete internet ban in Iran, okay, it was something that the descendants and the agents of foreign government, okay, had provided services to the people opposing the Iranian government. Okay, so Starlink terminals were reportedly used in Iran by the dissidents and the agents of foreign government. Okay, it was said that there were nearly 50,000 smuggled Starlink terminals that were operating illegally in Iran at the beginning of the conflict. Okay. Now, in mid 2026, Indian intelligence agencies have flagged the Iran incident, and the Ministry of Home Affairs steps in, withholds the final security clearance, and demands strict compliance guarantees. Okay. So it was in the January 2026 protest when the Iranian authorities had blacked out the internet services. Starlink had become the de facto link for the protesters to the outside world. It was at that time that Iran had filed complaint with the International Telecommunication Union, alleging that Starlink was violating the sovereignty of Iran as it did not have license to operate in the country. During that time, the International Telecommunication Union had also noted with concern that while Starlink had the capability to block illegal terminal use, okay, it did not do so, and its services or the smuggled terminals were used against Iran. Now, this is something that has raised concerns for Indians also. The government of India has now understood, okay, the capability to exert control over a internet service provider that is based in US. Okay, so government of India is now apprehensive that during the situation of geopolitical tension, how would government exert control over the activities of Starlink, and how effectively would they cooperate with the government of India? Okay, so Starlink's global operations and the and Elon Musk's critical dependence on the US government contracts for its finances and additional risk are the greatest red flag in this. Okay. Now we have to understand one thing, that this SpaceX mainly depends upon the US government contracts and the regulatory approvals for its commercial and national security launches. Okay, whatever the spectrum has to be allocated, it will be through the US government. Whatever the orbital licensing will be there, would be through the US government. Okay, so this is something that had raised the concern, that had raised the issue before the government of India, and now they are highly apprehensive of how Starlink would operate when some geopolitical tension arises for India. Now, in this situation, the news has now breaked. The Starlink's India launch is effectively on hold, and Starlink spectrum pricing framework is also delayed due to this. Okay. Now, what all are the national security concerns? So, we have to understand one thing, that this Iranian episode has become India's red line. A foreign satellite network operating beyond government control is something that is totally unacceptable for India. Okay. Now, first and foremost, the national security concern first is the loss of sovereign control. So, we have discussed this in detail, that the government of India would not be given a complete control. Okay. And India wants it only during the geopolitical crisis, because that will be of greatest importance. Okay. Government of India is very true in expecting that the US government could legally influence or compel its operations under the Cloud Act that the government of India does not have control over. Okay. Next is the Iran war precedent. So that is basically the biggest example the Indians have seen. Next is the dual use risk. Now, terminals can be used by terrorists. So basically the issue is that within the territory of India, the government of India can have control. But during a geopolitical crisis, the bordering areas are the ones which are crucial. So in the bordering areas, if Starlink provides its internet access, then these terminals could be used by terrorists, insurgents, drug smugglers, and anti-national elements against the government of India. Okay. Next comes the data privacy and surveillance. Now, there have been concerns over Indian user data flowing to the US servers and potential sharing with the US intelligence agencies, and everyone knows that how US has been trying to destabilize the governance and the administration in the country. Clear? So this is essentially a situation wherein the government of India has learnt a bigger lesson through the Iranian episode. Okay. Now, the Iranian case has proved that even the terms of service are not foolproof. Okay, if Starlink could not stop illegal usage of its internet in the war zone, then how will they guarantee India that they will be securing or helping India or the Indian borders during the times of crisis? Okay. Next comes the strategic concerns. So earlier, the national security concerns, these are basically the primary concerns that the government of India has flagged. Now, when we talk about the strategic concerns, the border and internal security, now there are risks of unauthorized connectivity in the highly sensitive areas like the LAC or the LOC. Dependency risk, the over-reliance on a single foreign provider could compromise military and civilian communication during a full-scale conflict. So, this is something that government of India must not bow before. Okay, and this is something that India has to ensure that Elon Musk gives full authority into the hands of Indian government. Next comes the military implications. Now, potential for foreign leverages during the Indo-Pakistan or the Indo-Chinese tension, the US could theoretically switch off or degrade its services. Okay. Next comes the regulatory compliance. So there are doubts over Starlink's ability to implement real-time geofencing and comply with the Indian emergency shutdown laws. Okay. So which are under the Telegraph Act. So this is there are high chances that when India would be requiring these services to be shut off, okay, in any crisis against either Pakistan or China, then due to the US influence, the Starlink may choose to operate otherwise. Okay, so when India is now in a situation that India wants satellite internet, but not at the cost of giving control over its digital sovereignty to a country, to a company that is not based in India. Okay. Moreover, if we just deep dive into it, okay, we will understand that these are not hypothetical fears. Okay, in a conventional war, communication blackout is a strategic weapon. India cannot afford a foreign CEO having a switch to kill over its airwaves. Okay, now when we talk about how India has been acting in comparison to how China has acted, okay, so let me make it very clear that India is not copying Chinese man. Okay, but it is certainly using the apprehension or the reasons to negotiate the deal with Starlink. Okay, now in China they have put a complete ban. Okay, the national security threat, foreign surveillance risk, so they have put a complete ban. Even they had fined a foreign ship in 2025 for using Starlink in the Chinese waters, and the message is very clear that no foreign satellite control over our territory. Okay, in case of India, the situation is on hold. The reasons are again similar: national security threat and sovereign control risk. They have withhold. The Ministry of Home Affairs had withhold clearance and had demanded strict sovereign compliance. Okay, so the government of India has made it clear that we would go ahead only when we have absolute control and the deal is signed only on our terms. Clear? So India has been using the playbook that China had previously used, and India has been using it as a warning shot. Okay, so if we have to understand this, okay, India is watching China's hardline approach, okay, and New Delhi also wants to appear very open and flexible in the business, but they have been sending a very clear message that we will not become a softer target for the digital colonization. Okay. Lastly, if we see what is India's broader approach, okay, so India is actively developing its own satellite communication ecosystem. Okay, so if we take an example, OneWeb, herein they have partnered with Bharti Airtel, and this is already operational. GSAT constellation, this is ISRO's indigenous satellites and upcoming indigenous low Earth orbit projects under the private sector. India has been emphasizing on the Atmanirbhar Bharat in the critical digital infrastructure and preference for companies that fully align with Indian data localization stringent security protocols. Okay, so India has made it clear that the doors still are not closed, but Starlink must meet with India's sovereign demand. Okay, they must meet with the sovereign requirements posed by India. Okay, so India is not against satellite internet, but it is against uncontrolled foreign satellite internet operating inside our territory. Clear? So herein the government of India is not talking about any defensive approach. Okay, this is something that is strategically important, and if Starlink does not play ball, okay, then India definitely has got the plan B, plan C, plan D available. Okay, now what all are the implications? Okay, so for Starlink, if we talk about the implications, so it marks delayed entry into the world's largest untapped internet market. Okay, IPO valuations will certainly take a hit. Okay, moreover, for India, still we have a dream of a faster internet in the unconnected areas. Okay, so if Starlink does not come, so there will be a slower rural connectivity rollout, but we will have stronger protection of our strategic interest. Okay, for Indian citizens, they would have continued reliance on the terrestrial fiber and the existing satellite options. Okay, that is in the case of OneWeb, which are available in the remote areas. Okay, thirdly, a global message. So major powers like India and China are unwilling to compromise digital sovereignty for any foreign technology. Okay, now we can understand that the ripple effect are global. India's stands is setting a very clear precedent for other developing nations like Brazil or Indonesia, who are also cautioning the foreign owned satellite dominance. Okay, because they do want to ensure their own sovereignty. Now, what is the way forward? Okay, now, the government of India must fast track ISRO's and private Indian low Earth orbit satellites project. Okay, the foreign players must sign binding contracts on data control, geofencing, and emergency shutdown. They must allow Starlink in the non-sensitive areas first. Example, educational hubs, rural farms with rigorous real-time security audits. Okay, and explore public-private partnership where Indian agencies have administrative override privileges on the foreign networks. Okay, so the future of satellite internet in India must be secure, sovereign, and truly inclusive. Okay, lastly, we must understand one thing, that the goal is not isolation, the goal is leverage. India, even though wants the technology badly, but it wants it with a control. Okay, and the control is clear that it should remain into the hands of the government of India only. Okay, so government of India understands one thing, the connectivity is important, but sovereignty is non-negotiable. Okay, now we also must understand that the SpaceX depends upon the US government contracts. Okay, and all the regulatory approvals to SpaceX are given by the US government. Okay, approximately 20% of the revenue also comes from the US government contracts. Okay, so as this has been filed, so this essentially gives the US government considerable leverage over Elon Musk as well as the SpaceX. Okay, so in a scenario where US has strategic interests, okay, with India, US can anytime pressure SpaceX to share data from the Starlink's Indian operation, and they may either allow or they may deny coverage over specific regions. Okay, so it is something that US can use against India. Okay, and we must not forget how US has always been a sugar daddy for Pakistan. Clear? Moreover, the Indian government also fears that during the times of geopolitical tension, Starlink could also act independently and it may go against the national security interest of the country. Okay. Starlink, which is essentially a US controlled system, can anytime disrupt or disable services in the region wherein the government of India would need uninterrupted connectivity. Okay, so it might happen during the times of disaster or military operations. So Starlink can anytime blackmail us. Okay, so the government of India does not want itself to be in a situation later on. Thus, they have been keeping a strong watch, and they are making the rules so strict and stringent. Moreover, everyone knows that how Elon Musk has been uh, in good books of President Trump. So, in a situation when Trump has been taking different decisions every second day, we cannot rely until promises have been made to us. Okay. Moreover, due to Starlink's global operations and commercial interest, it is doubtful which country it will support in the times of military conflicts. Okay. So this is essentially the valid concerns of the government of India. Okay, valid concerns of the Ministry of Home Affairs, and the delay that is taking place is also valid. Okay, so please do let me know in the comment section, how do you view this step taken by the government of India. Moreover, if you are aspiring to go for 2027 or 28 examination, GS Foundation batches are being launched from 22nd of June. For complete English GS Foundation batches are being launched based upon our smart model. Now, the smart model will have a dedicated dashboard wherein you can also track your progress and improve significantly. Now, the courses are priced economically. Still, you can use the code SRM Live to avail maximum discount on all StudyIQ IAS courses. Okay, so this was all from my side today. We'll see you all in the next session. Jai Hind.